After 3 hours of juvenile behavior, we bring the adult into the room.
Oy vey.
Our 1320 Kings insider and creator of the Kings Beat, James Ham. Hammer, what's happening, man?
Not a whole lot. Just got done podcasting with the boys, and I'm ready for summer.
What do you think about the ass whooping that the Suns got last night, and the fact that Devin Booker has spent a couple of days pouting and not doing his media obligations and all the fallout from that?
Yikes. I think that whole entire situation is a mess, and you made a big move thinking that will put you over the top and hide all the warts, but like the Ayton Monty Williams situation has been an issue for a while. Like everything about the way that they flame out, Chris Paul getting hurt once again, like he does every single time. It's big time. So yeah, I mean, that's a mess. And like, look, that could be a team that takes a substantial step backwards going forward, that extended themselves greatly to go get Durant. And now you're in a situation where, who knows what's going to happen with Chris Paul? Who knows what's going to happen if your coach is going to survive, if your center is going to still be on the roster. Yeah, that's eesh. No bueno.
So I will ask this, though, to everybody involved. We don't have any revisionist history with this, right? Or maybe you guys said something at the time, but that was still the move to make, right?
The
trading
KD
for
move?
Kevin Durant.
Yeah, I get why you do it. And I'll give him the benefit of the doubt in this regard, James. Maybe you made the acquisition like, all right, we did it. Okay, we know there's more to do. Let's see what we can get this season. But we know that there's more to do. This offseason will tell me a lot about whether that was the right move or not. I get why you roll the dice on Kevin Durant, but man, you gave up a lot to do it.
And I'll ask this, and James, I want to hear what you got to say too, because I think that team was I don't know if the outcome would have been any different if they didn't make the trade. Like, I don't think that team had a championship ceiling anymore.
It's hard to say because, sorry, James, you don't want to take away from what Denver did.
No, not at all. Not at all. But they were at the end of their short, the rope that they had before, and I thought they had to make that move if it was available.
I'm not sure what their ceiling was before. I really, really like Mikal Bridges. I think Cam Johnson's a good young player. And on top of that, how many first round picks did you give up? And you lost Jay Crowder in the deal. Like that was just, it's tough. I mean, you're literally pushing all in, and like you didn't have a guaranteed, like you didn't have a full house. You didn't have like a straight flush. Like you went all in with like 2 pair, and it was like, it's a rough, like, man, especially like the 2 young forwards that they gave up. Like, that could have been a really good build after, Chris Paul is gone. And that could happen as soon as this summer. I mean, he's on a non-guaranteed contract for next year. I think there's like 10 million guaranteed or something. They may have to. Oh, it's 15. Yeah, 15, they may have to.
Could happen in the next month.
Oof. Yeah, they may have to pay it though. They may have to keep him just because you went all in. You're pot committed on this team with Durant on it, and you just gave up 2 really good young forwards. I think if you could have done that deal any other way without giving up both of those forwards, I would have been comfortable with it. But now I think you really put yourself in a weird situation where you've got to get like really high value for Ayton. And I'm not sure that that's out there either. Like you paid him a bunch of money, and I don't think there's a bunch of teams clamoring for him at that rate.
I think there is. I disagree with you in that regard. I think DeAndre Ayton is going to have suitors, not a ton of them. And I don't know what the return is going to look like, but I think there's going to be at least a handful of teams that are really going to want DeAndre Ayton. But it'll be an interesting storyline to follow. Do you before we get to, the Kings and the Kings beat what you guys talked about today, do you think at any chance, because there's been a lot talked about with DeAndre Ayton and Monty Williams, do you think there's any chance that they choose Monty Williams over they choose DeAndre Ayton over Monty Williams?
I think that they could choose to go away from both of them.
Okay.
So not just one, but both. Like sometimes that's the way you got to do it. You don't want to put the blame on one guy or the other. You just have to go. It's time to go clean slate. Like I think we've talked about this a couple of times. This is a summer where I think that there's going to be like a handful of teams that like they really, really think about shaking up their star level player roster. So again, we've talked about this with Trey Young. Luka Doncic is really tough to move on from if you're the Dallas Mavericks. But could you see Kyrie Irving like taking a budget deal to go to play in Phoenix and take over for Chris Paul? Maybe. Like, and then I think that players like Cat, players like John Collins, like I think that there could be players like Zion Williamson. There could be like musical chairs all over the place where teams are swapping these big time players, these big money players, and like just trying to reset because it's not working. And you can't just keep banging your head against the same wall thinking that it's going to change.
What would you do, James? I wouldn't be so quick to move on from Ayton. I know there's chemistry issues, and you don't know if him and Monty Williams can get along. I say, guys, we gotta try something here. You're a good coach. You're a really good young center in this league. Because my whole thought was, if you move Ayton, you're not going to get another wing or a shooting guard. You got that covered. You're going to be looking for another inside presence that's going to give you 16 and 9, which is what Aiden's already given you. I would try to make that work possibly. How would you handle it?
Yeah, I'm not sure that you're looking for the same type of player. So, would it like I think that there are like some places where Ayton makes a lot of sense, but also say like Chris Paul helped make DeAndre Ayton, and he makes him into a player that he can use. And that doesn't mean that everyone else can use that type of player. I've never been super impressed with Ayton. His jumper's gotten way better. He does have some skills where when he came into the league, he didn't know how to set a screen at all. There were so many holes in his game. All he had was like go do a pin down in the middle of the key, put your hand up and have someone throw it over the top to you. He had no true post up move. I think he's gotten a little bit better at some of those things, but there's still like some holes in his game that like make me think that he's a guy that really is reliant on a passer like Chris Paul to make things work. Could that work somewhere else? Could you move him to, a team like the Pacers who have which isn't that who was interested before in him?
So we signed the offer sheet with, I think.
Yeah. But like he makes a ton of sense with Tyrese Halliburton because that's kind of what Chris Paul is. I'll go back to like I think the biggest mistake that the Phoenix Suns ever did was why did they not just draft Tyrese Halliburton at number 10 a couple of years ago instead of Jalen Smith? And that would have set them up to be star-studded for a long time. He would have learned under Chris Paul. He would have been their third guard. And then when Chris Paul was gone, it would have been him and Devin Booker, and that would have made so much sense.
The backcourt wouldn't have been big enough for the both of them, and then you would have got Domantas Sabonis in Phoenix.
There you go.
Just set off the chain of terrible events, James. Knock it off.
There it is.
You mentioned on Wednesday the piece that you were working on regarding Trey Lyles. I really enjoyed that. I just loved hearing the Trey Lyles story about, the De'Aaron Fox story he tells about being invited to his birthday party. And I thought you made a compelling case, both in the article and on the show, about how Trey Lyles, Sasha, Harrison, and even a potential mid-level exception all fit financially. What we've just struggled to figure out is practically. And it seems like if Sasha does come over, and I know like so many Kings fans are excited to talk about Sasha, but if he does come over and Trey Lyles does stay, it feels like Mike would almost have to really commit, barring maybe a handful of games during the season, to that small ball five idea with Trey Lyles playing predominantly the backup five.
Yeah, because the problem you have is like I don't think Sasha or Lyles, either one of them, can even buy you a couple of minutes at the three. I don't think they can. And so you have to find a spot for those guys. I kind of like the idea of using Trey Lyles as a small ball five all season long and just like having that be his natural position with this team. I think he's strong, he's big. He's broad through the shoulders. He knows how to rebound. He's a good passer. He's a smart player. He can hit the three ball. There are a lot of things that Trey Lyles does that I think are really, like he brings a lot to the table. And the fact that he can shift over and play next to Sabonis is actually a really nice like continuity piece as well. But number one, you're going to have a big backup behind those guys. And whether that's Rashawn Holmes because you can't move him, or it's Neemias Queta if they have the faith in him. Like you need someone else big because you're going to run up against teams where like there's nothing you can do. Sabonis is going to be in foul trouble, and you need someone big to defend a Jokic or an Embiid or someone like that. So I just think it's really difficult to see how Monty pieces together an entire roster if he commits to Sasha, if he commits to Trey, if he commits to Harrison Barnes. You still don't have the rim protection. You still don't have the athleticism. You still don't have like the big time rebounder that you can bring in off the bench that can change things. And that's a problem. Athleticism and length is something this team desperately needs at the 3 and the 4. And that's not something that you're going to get out of Sasha. It's not something you're going to get out of Trey or Harrison. And even to a certain extent, you're not getting it out of Keegan Murray either. So like, what else are you going to do? And how else are you going to fit them all in with the minutes if this is what you're bringing back? So one of those 4, I think can't be there like moving forward if you're going to try to do something different than what you were this last year.
I agree with you 100%. And I'm not saying this guy is the answer to all that, but I feel like we kind of overlook him a little bit. But what do you think the Kings think about Kessler Edwards when you talk about a guy like you just described, athletic, big wing defender? Do you think they looked at that as, we played him because he was the best we had at the time and we're looking to improve? Or do they look at him as somebody they could develop?
Yeah, I would say this, Casey, like any other year, my 12 years covering this team, Kessler Edwards is going to get a really solid look next season. Any other year, because you had teams that weren't very good, and you had teams that had holes, and you had teams that like had instability at specific positions, and a guy like that could find his way into the rotation. I'm not saying that Kessler Edwards can't find his way into the rotation, because there's a possibility that he spends the entire offseason in Sacramento. He gets bigger, he gets stronger. He shows them what he can do. His 3-point shot improves. All of these things happen for him. That's totally possible. But when you're a team who won 48 games and were the 3 seed, and you now have aspirations to be the 3 seed or higher next season and to win 52 or 55 games next season, like you have to have people who not only can fill a role, but that are like reliable, like known quantities. And that's what I would say his problem is. You don't know what you're getting from him on a nightly basis. And like we could talk about who else you could bring in for that position, and whether like Cam Reddish is reliable, or Matisse Thybulle, or Kelly Oubre, like all of these other options. The thing that they have that Kessler doesn't is a track record. And so it's just, that's going to be the difference. When you're a good team, you need good experienced players that not only fit a need, but have proven that they can actually play.
I forgot Cam Reddish.
I was terrified we were going to go a day without referencing Cam Reddish. Thank goodness here with 40 some odd minutes left in the show.
Take a flyer.
It's close. Close. We almost blew the streak of bringing up Cam Reddish on this show. Shout out to Hammer for making sure we reference that. KC is of the belief that, and I know you're just now starting this process, but you obviously know about the depth of this draft. KC is of the belief that when you talk about impact players, that impact player might come from the draft. Like you might be able to find someone there even as late as 24 who could be really beneficial for this squad.
Sure. I mean, that's always a possibility. Like most of the time, the 24th pick in the NBA draft is either one of these players that exactly who they are, or they're like total flyers, right? That you're taking on somebody that could have tremendous upside. I don't ever bank on someone from from 20 to 30, or even from like 15 to 30. like being able to jump in and play rotational minutes in year one. And the Kings might not need that for sure. They might not need that at all because they already know, like most of these positions that they have, they probably already have a really good idea of who they want to spend their free agent money on, whether Harrison Barnes will be back, all of these things. They already have it laid out. But like this is a spot where historically you can find like a Herb Jones, or you can find somebody, even like OG Anunoby was coming off a knee injury. That's why he fell to, I think, 23. Like these are types of players that you might be able to find at that spot where they might not have in Anunoby's like people knew that he could be a really good defender, but the problem he had was he had just torn an ACL like in March and somehow made it back to play in the regular season as a rookie. But with guys like Herb Jones, they're kind of flyers that you're like, okay, we have no idea what's going to happen when you put them on a pro floor, and then they're way better than you thought. And then like to flip it around, we talked about this a little bit the other day. Like the reverse is, can you take that 24th pick, and is there a team out there that has a nice player at the, maybe the $10 million, $11 million range where you can match up salaries with Rashawn Holmes? Or maybe they've got a player at the $6 million range that they would do a straight swap where you might be able to go out and buy like the 7th or 8th or 9th man in your rotation, and with the 24th pick, where you're getting instant, like a player who's 24 and already knows who he is as an NBA player, and can step in and help you in year one, where another team might be looking to, take a step back and reboot a little bit.
Yeah. No, I understand all that, and all the options intrigue me. I think there's urgency with this particular draft pick, but I don't know if there's pressure like there has been in the past, and that's a great thing. Like in the past, when because they're in the lottery and they hadn't put together a team that could be a postseason team, it was like, yo, you have to find this game changer. Now you can find a good rotational guy. Like it doesn't have to be a foundational piece that you're getting in the draft in either round, first or the second round. That would allow me, if I was them, and who knows how they're thinking about it, I would look to take a flyer at some point. Like I look at a guy like, and I see it varies whether it's mid first round, mid second round. But if somebody like Amani Bates was available, this is a guy that was a consensus number one player in the country 3 years ago. I would take a flyer on him and see if, man, maybe it just hasn't been a lot of good situations, get him here and try to develop him. But you have that luxury now, right? Like there isn't the same pressure, I should say, as saying like, whoever we draft, they have to play 18 to 23 minutes as a rookie, else we're behind the 8 ball. They don't have that pressure.
Yeah, and you know what? I think if you look at the draft picks that the Kings have taken during the Monty McNair, Wes Wilcox era, and I've had conversations with them, they like to draft players that they know who they are. Like they are not in the speculative game, right? They're not looking at players and saying, okay, he could be like a floor of out of the NBA in 2 years and a ceiling as superstar. They've always taken a more cautious approach, and like, what is it that I know about these players, and like, will it translate? Hopefully it does, but like they go with more mature players. They go with players who have defined games, defined roles. I'll even point to a guy like Keon Ellis. Like when you go and you pick Keon Ellis up, as soon as the draft ended, the Kings went and signed Keon Ellis. Like the second it ended, Keon Ellis is straight up a 3-and-D2, and a guy who has played that role his entire life. Like that is who he is. There is no variable for what he can be. He's always going to be a role player. He might be like, there are varying degrees on how good he can be, but that he's going to be able to hit the 3-point shot, and he's going to be able to stay in front of smaller guards without any problem. And so those are things where you can look at the Kings. They go and they sign a kid who was a 4-year college player. They know exactly what they're getting. They're getting a player who not only is going to be asked to play a specific role at the G League level, but that's the same role he played with his college team. So there is no like, transferring of like how is this going to translate type stuff. This is who he is. He's going to step in and play. And so I think that that's something that we've seen time and time again with these guys, even though it's been a short stint here, like 3 drafts with them, but they go for what they know.
What is happening with Keon Ellis next year?
I forgot about Keon Ellis.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting because both Keon and Nemi are they're restricted free agents. So they have qualifying offers, but the qualifying offers are for 2-way contracts. It's a little complicated, but I think it really does depend. Like I've talked to people who, like around Stockton, and they said like Neemias Queta could not have done more to help himself. Like Neemias Queta finished all G League defensive team. He was second in MVP balloting. He was on the all league. He was first team all league G League. Like this is a kid who like took the criticism and stuck down in the G League and developed and became exactly what you wanted him to become. Now, whether that's good enough to be an NBA regular, we still don't know that. And so like the Kings, they've got some invested in here. They clearly love what he accomplished at the G League level. His coaches at the G League level love him and are like, you guys need to sign this kid. But I think it's going to really come down to, even with both of these players, like how do they fit in the grand scheme of the roster? And if Queta can't get on the court and can't be that third center for you or even second center for you, then you really have to start looking at other options. Like, are you better going out and chasing a veteran center that understands the role and isn't going to be like mistake prone and stuff like that? Or can you get away with it, like having Trey Lyles there as like a small ball 5 and then Queta there as well. And there, he's not going to play that much except for in specific situations as he's grooming to maybe be a player next year or the year after. And you asked me about Keon. I think Keon's in the same situation. I mean, you got Malik Monk, you got Kevin Huerter at the 2. I think that they need his athleticism and length as a defender and his shooting ability. But the fact that he can't play the 1 really does hurt Keon's value. And they've used him a little bit in that way. And I could see him playing alongside Malik. But, he's probably, I was told he's a little further behind than Neemias Queta is.
So, James, do you think they already know how they feel about both of those guys? I mean, is there something between now and the start of free agency that can change their minds about how they feel about those guys? One way or the other, they think they're the guys, or if they didn't like, we have to go out and get somebody. Is there anything that can be done in between that time? Do they kind of already have an idea of which way they're going to go?
No, I think you have an idea, but that doesn't mean that that's what's going to happen. Because like, let's say you get to draft night and you pull off some 3-team trade and all of a sudden you got an extra 7 foot tall, 22-year-old kid that's under contract for 2 years and he's already on your team now once you make the trade. So like situational things happen all the time in the NBA where, again, if you're the Kings, you're looking to shop Rashawn Holmes nonstop. Right. And that's not a dig on Rashawn. It's just like, it hasn't worked out in his time. And I would think that they believe the same thing, that the Holmes believe that it's time for him to go somewhere else. But if you find a deal where, you swing a trade where you give up the 24th pick and somehow you bring back like Zach Collins in a swap for Rashawn Holmes, all of a sudden you're looking at your situation differently. Like, do you have a guy who can play the center position? Would Nemi still fit there or not? And this can happen at any of those positions. I mean, it could happen in the backcourt as well, where, they make a move on draft night to move off of Davion Mitchell and go to someone else, like a bigger guard to play the spot or whatever. Like, things change for when that happens. A trickle down is pretty severe for guys like Keon Ellis and guys like Neemias Queta, or it can be at least.
Feels like the first Zach Collins reference. Certainly the first Zach Collins reference this offseason.
Not interested.
Yeah,
I don't know.
He can't ever even stay healthy, though.
No, he can't. But But when he has played, I thought, like the second half of the season, we're still looking at a guy, again, that's the player that the Kings could have taken in number 10 instead of trading that pick for number 15 and 20, where they took Justin Jackson and Harry Giles in the 2017. But like, he's only 25 years old. And, last season in San Antonio, 11.6 points, 6.4 rebounds, 2.9 assists.
How many teams has he been on?
Just two.
Just two?
Portland,
Okay.
just Portland and San Antonio.
Okay.
And he played 63 games last year. So you're looking, he shot 37.4% from three. Like, his skill set still says that he can be a quality player. And they locked him up on a 3-year, $22 million deal. So next season, they're on the hook for $7.7 million, which is, that's affordable. But again, if you look at, if San Antonio wanted an additional first round pick and they're not committed to Collins after this next season, maybe they would take on a swap like that. And I'm not sure if they would or not, but those are the things that if you're the Kings, you've got to look at.
We'll talk more Kings basketball, including what Hammer and the crew talk about on the upcoming edition of the Kings Beat podcast. So we'll talk Kings basketball, NBA basketball with our 1320 Kings insider, James Ham, when we return here on D-Lo and KC, brought to you by Sky River Casino on Sacramento sports leader ESPN 1320. Marvelous. Marvelous.
The Kings didn't get Bogey in that deal. Somebody in here says the Kings got Bogey in the 10 for the 15 and 20. That's not where they got Bogey.
Those J Balvin threes are amazing.
No, they got Bogey when they had the 9th pick, and they traded back to 13th where they took Papagiannis, and they got the 13, the 28, and Bogdan Bogdanovich's rights.
Yeah, I saw that.
He said, I don't mean to bother you, but if it was me, you would have been had him already.
He's such a jackass.
God is a fool. You said J Balvin. At J Balvin. I know you got me, fam. I'm not even tripping. But if it was me, you would have been had the shoes already. I'm just saying. No pressure, though.
That dude needs help.
DJ Khaled.
I'm super confused by all these people who are mentioning Drew Eubanks in the chat. Like,
Drew Eubanks.
like, I just
Drew Eubanks.
like that's a 14th, 15th man on a bad roster. That's what that is.
Where do I know
Sorry.
Drew Eubanks from? Where would he play?
He played for Portland this last year.
I vaguely remember him.
Played for San Antonio, Portland. Yeah, I mean, he's had some years where he's okay. This last year, 6.6 points, 1.3 block, 5.4 rebounds in 20 minutes. And he shot 38.9% from three, but only on 0.2 attempts per game. I'm not there. Yeah. No, my thoughts on Zach Collins. That's what I was just saying. Like, if you were going to go out, I think Zach Collins actually fits with the Kings, and he's, for like what he was in college, he's mean. Like, he's a dude with like pointy elbows and doesn't mind throwing them. And if he could ever stay, what's that?
So maybe that's why I don't like him, because I don't really like playing against him.
You wouldn't like playing against him, like a dude like that?
You'd like to have him on your team, I guess, but I'm saying that's probably why I'm against him, because I don't like playing. I don't like when the Kings play against him.
Yeah, he's tough. Yeah, I get it. You're right. Yeah, we're used to scouring the end of teams' benches. You're right. The game 916. You should not, like, Drew Eubanks would not make the Sacramento Kings roster. Like,
TJ just came in and just said, hell no to Trey Jackson Davis. I don't know who was asking for him, but TJ said, don't even think about it.
We could have been talking to each other.
He came out of nowhere. I scrolled up. I was like,
oh. Well, he just really wants us to know then.
Appreciate it, TJ.
Yeah. I don't know. Like the Kings have like plenty of things that they can do here to make their team better. Somebody asked how many firsts would it take to get OG? That's a difficult question, Thomas, because OG can opt out next season. So that's going to hurt his value.
Michigan Wolverines. I have never been to the big house. Hopefully one day. I don't know when it's going to happen, but hopefully one day.
If you'd like to sponsor our trip to Ann Arbor, Michigan, contact Rich Ripley. I want to see that. Okay.
Thanksgiving going to be crazy this year. I got to deal with Niners Seahawks. Then 2 days later, Michigan Ohio State. Oh, baby. That's going to be around Ryan's first birthday, too. I think it's a Sunday next year. Sunday the 26th, which means the party will be on Saturday, probably.
Coming back, James. $1320 Kings Insider James Ham here with us. Hammer, you mentioned when you joined us, you're fresh off a pod recording that we'll post soon here at the Kings Beat. You and Sean Cunningham, Brendan Nunez. What did you guys talk about today? Give us a little preview of the pod.
Yeah, I mean, I think we spent a lot of time on the De'Aaron Fox, Domantas Sabonis All-NBA selections, and just sort of like how unique that was, but also, sort of the surprises that like both Fox and Sabonis scored more points in the voting system than a guy like LeBron James, Damian Lillard. Like Fox wasn't all that far off of being a second team All-NBA player. And I thought that was really interesting. I don't know. Outside of that, we talked a lot about Rashawn Holmes and whether we think he'll be back with the team next year. Some conversation about the wild playoff games that we've been watching, whether the Warriors still have enough in them to get through, or like the greatness that is the series with the 76ers and the Celtics, and really how everyone in the league has overlooked the Denver Nuggets all season long, and they're just skating along, heading right towards an NBA championship.
Company included.
That's me too.
Yeah, all of us.
We'll all ride over them all season.
Me too.
What's your before we get back to the Kings? You mentioned Rashawn there. I want to talk about Rashawn here for a minute, but what was your opinion on last night's game with the Celtics and the 76ers? We had a pretty strong opinion on Philadelphia at the end of that game, but I think the main story in that game was Tatum was 4 minutes away from the worst off season of his life. And 4 minutes later, he was able to start a post-game interview by saying, as one of the best players in the world, I got to go out there and get stuff done. And he did just that.
Yeah, I mean, he's always going to be like the X factor for them. He's so incredibly difficult to defend because he's so big. He's so mobile and so big. And so I was surprised how bad of a game he was having. And to be honest, he hasn't really had that great. Like, he's had a couple of solid games, but he hasn't had a spectacular playoff run there. And for him to come up big late was huge. I thought, like, that just the way that game kept going back and forth, like you thought Boston had it tied up, but that they were going to run away with it. And then to see Philadelphia come back and the momentum shifts, I don't know. I just think it's a really, really fun series to watch unfold. And like, you're watching stars become even bigger stars, Tatum and Brown. And then, of course they make all NBA first team, and they're just going to ruin the financial structure of the Boston Celtics. Like, holy cow, their extensions just went through the roof with those first team All NBA selections.
Cap's going up.
Cap's going up. Yeah, but one of those
When all
guys
else fails,
his
just put out
extension
the
is
stats going up.
$309 million extension. You're like, oh my gosh, like yikes, that's big. Yeah.
We joke about the caps going up, but shouldn't that work that way though? Like, what's I don't know, $309 million extension right now clearly isn't the same as when they add $50 to $60 million on the cap. Like it's in theory, it should balance out and
It does
not really affect anything, right?
It does. It's a percentage, right, James?
It's based, yeah, like a super max, like designated player, designated veteran super max is like you can get up to 35% of the salary cap, I believe. So like and that doesn't matter what the cap is. Like whatever the cap is, that's what he's getting. And so that's a lot. That's a lot of money. And that's what happens when you have two superstars, right? You got to pay the money. It's what's going to happen with the Kings. Come up with De'Aaron Fox, and is going to be due an extension in like 2 years, and Domantas Sabonis, of course, next summer. You're hoping to get him locked in long term, but once you have both of those guys locked in, there's going to be like a 2-year period where they're making over $100 million like combined. That's a lot of money.
We were looking at someone's extension that's coming up, and it was like an estimate because they don't have the new cap figures yet. They don't have the new, the new TV money that comes in and is going to balloon the cap up a little bit. So all of it was some outrageous contract. It was like, yeah, it's an estimate. It's about $59 million. I just can't remember whose contract it was. Just to guess, just roughly 57, 58, $59 million, somewhere around there.
That's season.
Year one. Yeah, a season. Oh, yeah.
And that's year one. Not where it ends up.
That's not where it ends up. Like we speculated, was it Steph?
Yeah.
We think Steph will be the first to get, like Steph will, if Steph signs an extension at the end of this, and why wouldn't he? Could probably be flirting with like $80 to $90 million in a single season.
Oh, that's nuts. I haven't even looked at that to see, like he's already made so much money in his lifetime. Like it just, the modern NBA player, just a standard dude can make so much, but like he's at 258 million coming into this season. And then he made 48 million this season. So he's over 300 million, and he has another 160 million on the books. So we're looking at like $460 million in his career. That's crazy. But when you consider the Sacramento Kings in 1984-85, when they're in Kansas City, they sold for $12 million. When the Jim Thomas bought the team from the Lukenbill group, that was like $164 million. And that's where we're at now. Even when Vivek bought the team, $535 million valuation in 2013.
That's great.
And now you got a player who's going to make $460 million in his career.
That's crazy.
It's wild.
And I don't know if the extensions, I think the accolades, everything matches up. It feels like if it's not Steph, it'd probably be Luka might be the first $100 million player.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. It's probably more likely to be Luke. Well, you need you need him to be Dirk, right? You need him to, like, because that's part of it. Right? Like staying with your team gets you, the added incentives for that more money. But yeah, you're absolutely right, because Luka's younger. Yeah. Steph
might it might be like 80 or 90.
Like Steph's probably only signing one more extension.
Yeah, I think
so. He's got 3 years left on his deal. He's 35. You're looking at 38. Are you going to give him that much? Well,
yes.
You give him whatever he wants.
Yeah, you give him whatever he wants.
I guess he
gets a Kobe deal.
Yep.
But he also has a Subway deal.
He was just absolutely destroyed for that.
Yeah, I mean,
Kobe Bryant taking $30 million.
Yeah, but like if I'm Steph too, I'm looking at like if he wants to be good in those last couple of years, like he's making so much money outside of the game of basketball. Like, is there an amount that you look at, you're like, I probably should just play for a couple of years if he's going to keep going, play for like a low dollar amount just to make sure that his team is functional.
Nah.
Well, the cap's going up.
The cap's going up. Get your money. Like, hey, get your money. I get it. Go get your money. I get it. But at the same time, like, if you want to be a winner and you're the guy who's eating up the salary of 7 players on the roster, maybe there is
We
a time where
offered
you
James a
take
big
less money.
salary, but he's doing this segment for the love of the game.
The love of the game.
The love of the game. James doesn't find that.
I got that. I got that Subway money coming in. I got that CarMax money coming in. I got that Under Armour money coming in. So we're good. We're
there
good.
you go.
Hey,
You
not
keep
to, not to
James
step on
Ham,
the pod at
Subway
all.
deal.
You don't have to give it all away, but we didn't get a chance to talk to you about the All NBA selections, man. And I just thought it was really cool for those two guys to get that honor, and it also signified to me, James, a kind of confirmation that you have your cornerstones, like you have your pillars of this franchise, and you're not necessarily in search of that anymore. Do you agree? Do you think they still need to add, another star level play? Like, go out and get one. Like, if Keegan becomes one, that's different. Like, Keegan is the guy that you drafted, but do they need to still go out and find another star level guy to solidify, hey, we're in the playoffs every single year? Do they have to? It would be nice, but do they have to?
Well, what's your goal? Like, if your goal is to be in the playoffs every single year, I think you got a roster that you can do that for the next 4 or 5 years. If your goal is to be a contender, then like a true contender, I think you need one more big piece. And that's not to take away from any of these other guys. I mean, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, Keegan could be that big piece, but you need someone there that can get you to that point where Keegan is that next level player. And so I would kind of look at, like, Fox and Sabonis are all NBA, but the third team all NBA. There's a possibility they move up to second team all NBA. One of them might make it to second team all NBA. Maybe they don't. Maybe they're not all NBA players at all next season. But my point is that you're not guaranteed that either one of these guys are like all of a sudden superstars. You don't have that. You're not, the Dwayne Wade, LeBron James, Chris Bosh. You might have Chris Bosh, but you don't have the LeBron James and the Dwayne Wade like tandem. So you got to keep pushing forward, because this is still going to be like a great, if you're going to be outstanding, you're going to push for titles, you need to be a team that has like 4 really, really close to like one like lead players, but your players aren't quite like a legit superstar number 1. They're like more like a 1A, but that means you need more of those guys, because you're going to go up against these teams that we're seeing right now that just have so much firepower going into the playoffs and going into their deep runs, where, again, it's James Harden and Joel Embiid, it's Jaylen Brown, and it's in Jason Tatum. It's, I don't know what we put with Jokic, but it doesn't matter. Whoever the next best player is, he's still better than the combination of what the Kings have with Fox and Sabonis right now, just because that's how elite Jokic has played the last couple of years. But Booker and Durant and Steph, Clay, and all of their guys, you need to build your team with as much talent as possible. And they aren't there yet. They're a really good team. They need more to take that next step.
Yeah, James, I'll push back a little. I don't think you need 4 1A type players. You need
Yeah.
Look at the teams that you just named. Now they've got at least one top tier guy, but after that, like, it's good players to role players.
Well, I mean, the Celtics have 2 first team all NBA players. So
You're the only ones like that, though.
Yeah, but I mean, we can't say that about 76ers. The 76ers, first of all, they have those other players, those like the Tobias Harris,
Tobias Harris.
Well, no, what I'm not saying that they're not at the level of Harden and Embiid, but they're at the top level of the Kings, like third and fourth guys, like Tobias Harris is. Like, on paper and in actuality, like, who's better, Tobias Harris or Kevin Huerter? Like we could sit here and have debates and stuff, but
we
that's
have a
what
debate about that one. I know I like Tobias Harris, but I mean he's exactly what we look at with Harrison Barnes right now.
Yeah, no, I mean that's probably
way more expensive.
Way more expensive. Yeah, yeah, but still, that's the type of player. Like we talked about this in the past. You losing Harrison Barnes, you need 2 more, 3 more Harrison Barnes type players on this team to support the players that you have. And like while I think OG Anunoby is a better player without any question than Harrison Barnes, how far better? Like he's like, in my opinion, OG is a really, really strong third player on a great team, right? Like, I don't think we're talking about him supplanting Fox and Sabonis as one of the top spots on the Sacramento Kings. You're hoping that he can be a better number 3 than Harrison Barnes was number 3 if you were able to land him. And then you hope that Keegan Murray someday can be that, or possibly even start playing in that number 1, number 2 option area, but you don't know. And so this team is like, again, it's not built with 2 superstars at the top. It's built with 2 stars and some really, really, really good players in Fox and Sabonis, but there's still going to be a gap between what they are and what, again, like LeBron James has been historically, or Kevin Durant historically.
You don't like OG as much as James and I do you?
Maybe
OG on the Kings.
Yeah, maybe not as much, but I like him.
Okay,
I like him for sure. I mean, especially, and this is no shade to him. No, don't play the clip, especially if you're replacing him with Harrison. I think he's better than Harrison. I said don't play the clip.
Man, it's been a week long.
I said don't play the clip.
A week long.
Harrison, I love you, big dog.
What Shawn Michaels said right before the super kick.
I think OG is better though.
Yeah, I mean, OG is a game changer on the defensive end, and on the offensive end, he's a very similar player to Harrison Barnes.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Like because I think OG's most touted, especially with this for his defense. He's not a bad offensive player at all.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, he's a really good all around player. He's a legit number 3 on a like a title contending team. Like you put him in, I'd put him in the Wiggins category, maybe above Wiggins, like in the grand scheme of things. Like that's what I think of him as a player. I think he's really, really good, and his defensive intensity changes the whole game plan for everyone else. Like he's a guy that you put him in a position and he takes a lot of pressure off of everyone.
Wiggins is a 2 right now.
In
my mind, it's Steph and it's Wiggins.
Now here's the problem though. He's a 2, but that's not a championship 2.
No, I did that was a point I was trying to make. Is like if Clay was still Clay, well, we know it's game 6.
Game 6, baby. Oh, it's going crazy. Game 6,
like
Clay.
That's Andrew Wiggins is perfect there. Andrew Wiggins can't be a 2.
No,
like a number 2 guy.
I don't think so.
On a championship team?
Yeah,
I don't think so.
I have a tough time.
Look, Warrior people and fans will say he was the second best player last year. They won a championship.
Yeah.
So
true.
I mean, maybe that flies in the face of what I'm saying right now. But
yeah, and the Kings they're not going to trade Keegan. That's not what I'm saying. Like people bring it up like I'm sending him to Canada right now in an OG trade. No, that's not happening. Like the Kings, if they were to go get OG, it would be with the idea that they would keep Fox, Sabonis, Murray, and have OG as the 4th in that, like in their group. And then whatever else you got around that, you've got, if you still have Monk, you still have Herter, you still have, Trey Lyles, you still have like some of these other players that actually bring value, Davion Mitchell, whatever it is you got to give up. It's going to be tough, but like that's where I would be if I were the Kings. Like if you're chasing a guy like OG, it's for as much draft capital as possible.
We were talking about DeAndre Ayton a few minutes ago. Do you think Rashawn has value across the league, or in pockets of the league, or anywhere in the league?
No, but
I don't say that to be a jerk. Like he didn't play a lot this year, so it's a bit difficult for
No, he's a super negative contract. But that doesn't mean he's not movable. I mean, like, I think Joe Johnson is one to prove that any contract can be traded.
Fact. That is an absolute fact right there.
Yeah, and there's been players like throughout the course of time that have been traded for like all kinds of things. So, I mean, whether or not the Kings have to attach 2 second-round picks to get rid of his contract and not take back much, or if they have to attach the number 24 pick and not take back much, that might be something that they at least listen to. But like Rashawn Holmes, like I guess you can just play it out, just keep him on the roster for the next 2 years and pay the $25 million. But I don't know why Mike Brown didn't give him a shot this last year, but he didn't, and I don't expect that to change. And you still look at him like, why would it make, like, we keep saying how they could use a player like Brandon Clark. Yeah, like why couldn't Rashawn Holmes have been that type of player? And he just never found it. He never found his niche here with this group of Kings. And he's a player who's used to playing major minutes and then fell out of the rotation completely. I'm still confused why he never got more of a shot, especially since I don't think Chimezie Metu is really like long for this team either. So you're kind of confused by what's happening. Why is it that you're doing what you're doing with him when he's just losing value left and right? I still think you're not going to stretch provision him, because then you have him on the books for 5 years at $5 million per year. Yeah. And the only thing you would get is a $7 million savings and roughly $8 million savings next year to trade him. But you're still looking at those last 3 years that you just tacked on where you're paying $5 million a year. And that doesn't make any sense.
It's a tough spot.
I have no idea what's going to happen with Rashawn Holmes. Because like you said, I don't know the trade partner that you'd have to deal with. I agree with James where the contract makes it feels like it makes it really difficult to move him. Like, not to say this in a negative way to Rashawn Holmes, but who's taking on that contract? Especially
teams will take it on, but it's going to be in a situation where they're giving out a guy with a 3 or 4 year contract. So, like, again, like John Collins right now, they're trying to dump his contract. They have been for like the last year and a half after they signed him to an extension. But you got a guy making $25 million per year for another like 3 years. So if you were to move him, they would at least save the last year, like, because Holmes would fall off the books in the last year and you'd have to come up with more. Like, it would be slightly complex. But yeah, I mean, I think that there are ways in which the Kings can move Rashawn Holmes. The problem is the second they do something like stretch provision him, the money's dead and you can never get it back again. It's off into space. So don't expect them to do something rash like that because they think that they eventually can use his contract in some way. Even if you wait until the end of this year and you bite the bullet and he barely plays and he makes $12 million, but then the next summer he's looking at $12.8 million. If you stretch provision him, then now you're looking at 3 year stretch provision, but only $4 million per year, and you save $8 million up front. So it makes a lot more sense. And it's a lot smaller dollar amount, and that's just for eating his contract for 1 more year.
That's why I don't gamble. It's dead money that I never get back.
Well, yeah, Scott River, you might get it back.
I was gonna go out the last time we were there. I was gonna hit the table. It didn't happen. Hammer, what do you think happens tonight? We've got Warriors at Lakers coming up on ESPN 1320 at 6:00. You got a prediction for that one?
I've been all over the board bad with my predictions. I think the Lakers are going to beat them. So,
okay.
And if they don't beat them tonight, they're not winning the series. So, like, you lose tonight, Golden State's going to win Game 7, and here we go again.
Steph is going for 50. I don't know if it's tonight or if it's Sunday. Steph is going for 50 at some point.
Hopefully, it's October.
But will it be enough?
and that's the question.
Hopefully, that's when he goes for 50. October 21st. 2023. Yeah, hopefully it ain't tonight. Hopefully there ain't no Game 7.
Yeah, they could go for 50 and lose, especially if poor freaking Andrew Wiggins can't shoot.
Yeah.
Good thing Draymond plays for the Warriors, or he'd take a shot right in his rib at the start of the game.
Yeah.
You might do it anyway. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's his teammate or not.
Well, that seems like a good place to end this show.